see everybody, and I'm going through happy ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future. My daughter's first birthday was here, my other daughter's christening was here, my wedding was right out at that table. And there have been some other meetings here, but this is a really fun and happy time because everybody here celebrates the same thing. Beauty, nature, art, antiques. Some of you have heard bits and pieces of this presentation, so I'm switching it up a little, and I hope you'll find it all new and exciting information. First of all, when we talk about an antique print, what is an antique print? Some people think a print is a piece of art. Not exactly. A print or an engraving, everything we're working with here are engravings. And that is when a matrix has been used. It can be wood, stone, in this sense, copper plates. Matrix is used to create a design that is inked and put through heavy rollers, and out the other end comes a piece of paper with the reverse image in ink engraved on it. The engraver casts this image with a very fine tool called a burin. It's heavier than a needle, but like a chisel, and every line that you see has been hand incised into this piece of metal, which is then inked. The resulting impression on paper is what we see with all these examples here. The pressure that's created when this goes through the rollers in the press creates something called a plate mark, and that's what we use to identify the integrity of something. Is this authentic? Is it a print, which I use as a reproduction term, or is it an actual engraving? And you'll be able to see after some of the actual plate marks. Anything before the 1900s we're going to consider an antique. So as far as Garden Week goes, Garden Month goes, the study of plants and botany and nature has been going on forever. Since the Papyrus Evers 1500s, things were documented, plants were documented, mostly about cures and treatments. Pliny's work, the Greek philosophers would also write different plants, different flowers, and what their medicinal and curative powers were. It was in the 1600s that there became a change in these florilegiums. That's your word for today. Florilegium, great word. The florilegiums were more about the beauty and the decorative nature of plants rather than their therapeutic or their medicinal applications, or being used as guides for apothecaries or physicians. So this was the time when we saw people devote incredible man-hours and patience and years to create these folios of art. My personal favorite is Cornelius Blomart. But we're not going to talk about Cornelius Blomart. We're going to talk about Bessler. Basile Bessler was a Nuremberg apothecary. His work was done in the mid to late 1600s, and his monumental Hortus Essensis is really noted transition between plants and medicines to plants and beauty and nature. And these are some of my favorites. I started collecting, I think as Winky said, in college, we lived outside of Boston, lots of history, mostly primitive things. And then one day I stumbled into this rareté, which I'll tell you about later, and that started it right there. That's what started it. And then fun things happen, and these things find you. But the Bessler, this was one of the first things that I bought when I moved to Washington. So Basile Bessler, mid-1600s, he had a magnificent folio, and this is a colored one. Everything would have come out originally black and white, and then they would have been hand-colored either at the time they were produced or later on. Somebody got a hold of them in 1980 and said, I'm going to color this in. But a lot of these you can tell just by the quality of the color and the tone that they were done at the time they were originally made. What's nice about this one, and this is another thing about dating and authenticating the pieces, you can see the calligraphy coming through the verso. And that's how we know that this was a first edition. This one, after you all walk around, you can see there's writing there. This one, there's heavier writing here. And these predate the deluxe edition. A deluxe edition would have been done for collectors or people who were sponsoring his work with art and printing only on one side, the back verso was blank. I prefer the older ones with the print coming through because it's just more fun. Here's another one here. This would have been a first edition, and you can see the print coming through the back. This is also another first edition. You can see the engraving coming through the verso. So these are the bestlers. The black and whites are rarer because now everybody colors them, and you can find these, and it goes in cycles. 30 years ago, they were hard to find. I had a friend who wanted some of the Blow Mart Ferrari lemons. I want 9. I'm going to put 9 in my kitchen. They were impossible to find, and it's very cyclic. Now you can find them, and where do we find them? We find them in barn sales. We find them online. We find them at dealers. How do you know if you're getting an authentic one? We'll discuss that later. But they come to you, and it's just a lot of fun. This one I found. This is one of the barn stories. You all see this. This was in a duct tape frame with a partner up in Plainfield, New Hampshire, and I went to the auctioneer and I said, "What are these?" He said, "Yep, botanicals." And I said again, due diligence, "What are these?" And he said, "Yep, they're old." And I thought that they were bestlers, but I said, okay. I bought 2 for $350, threw them in the back of the truck. The kids threw their skis in, the snow melted, the ice and snow went through the duct tape frame, and you could see a dirt line creeping up. These were in much worse condition. There's a wonderful conservator in Woodstock, Vermont. I drove through this 7-foot snowstorm. It was like Wizard of Oz. She opened the door. She said, "Bring them in. I can save these." And she had her hood and her lab coat on. And I said, "What are they?" She said, "Yep, they're bestlers." So just to give you an idea of how this happens, I paid $350 for 2, and they were probably worth $6,000 or $7,000. They are worth $6,000 or $7,000, depending if we're in New York, a piece, somewhere else for the pair. So this is how you find some really interesting pieces of art. This one came beautifully framed, ready to go from a dealer, and that was that. This one, this is a great story. Paul and I took an adventure to, what was the town? The town outside of...
Near Salisbury.
Yes. And there was a lady that looked like Harry Potter, Prince engravings falling off the shelves. You had to wade through them. And she had this one, and this was another one of the bestlers, first edition, in great shape. Now, another topic, I'm just trying to share a lot of information in a short time for those swimmers who need to go swimming. So for example, you'll say, well, I want to start collecting these, Chris, but why is that worth $6,000, that worth $7,000, and this worth $450? So why is that? They're all bestlers. We have authenticated them. We can see a plate mark, the quality of the paper. We know that they are all from the same period. It's the aesthetics. Some people might say, I have the perfect room for this. I like lavenders and pale colors. Others would say, no, I like this much better. So truly, something as simple as the content or the subject matter will influence the price of the availability. This Caryophyllus Major Indie is also a bestseller, and you can see the color is magnificent. So this clearly is in the category of the lilies, something that people would want to spend more money on if they were collecting. So those are the bestlers. So after bestler, that was we had Cornelius Blomar, who did the lemons. Now you have probably seen versions of these lemons. The lemon with the ribbon that tells the different species name or describes the plant. These were done, it was done as the first scholarly book on citrus fruit. Citrus fruit was a big deal in Europe. There was no citrus fruit. And as it was imported, as different species were imported, it was something to brag about. It was something that you said, I have a garden of bergamot, I have a garden of lemon, I have a garden of limes. And a lot of nobility would have these very extensive gardens. So Cornelius Blomar, one of the foremost artists, was found by Giovanni Battista Ferrari, a Jesuit scholar, and Ferrari said, would you please put together this book? They spent several years doing it, several different artists contributed to it, and again, you'll come up after and look, each page was a different fruit, a different cross-section. And the ones that you see now, mostly are colored, either the pink ribbon or the blue ribbon. Same page, same everything. And I like to show, I don't have any here, an uncolored and colored version because they are there. Now, this is another one of those best days of my life. This became available, this is from 1636, became available at Doyle sometime last year. I called a colleague who enjoys collecting these things, and I said, how'd you like to buy Hesperines? And she said, no. I said, yes. And it was at Doyle, and she was undergoing some very serious chemotherapy, and I thought, well, gosh, she's doing that. I certainly can hold up and bid on this. So I sat at the dining room table, Paul sat in the other room with earplugs in, and I started bidding. And I've never been more nervous, and I'm a very calm bidder. I've never been more nervous because it was partly for her, partly for me, and the number kept going up, 1600s. It was called, it already had a broken binding, which means that 2 pages had been removed. So it was intact, it was in perfect condition, but 2 pages were removed, which immediately changes the value, which also makes it affordable. So we go, bidding's over, and I didn't get the confetti. And I was like, oh, I didn't get it. So I thought, well, just call. Hi, this is bidder number 127. Could you please tell me, did I win lot 439? No. I said, okay, thank you, bye. Wait a minute, I'm not bidder 127. Hi, I made a mistake. I'm bidder 128. Did I win lot? She said, yes, you did. I was so excited. Truly, between my children getting married, and that this was like the most exciting thing in my life. So that is me.
Sorry, Saul.
No, he was number 2. No, he was number 2. It was the children, the marriage, and then the book. It was those 3 things. But it was truly so exciting. And the concept that you can have a piece of paper, and I'm going to share this with you. This is from the 1600s. It's in mint condition, and I have to say, can I say it was you? A year ago, you would have all been given a white glove to wear because I thought you couldn't touch it. And we have someone much more expert than I sitting right here, and he said, ditch the white gloves. You don't need white gloves because these have been here from the 1600s, and nothing's going to happen to them. They've survived moisture, they've survived weather, they've survived mold, they've survived insects, and they're magnificent. And to be so close to something so old that tells so much. The other thing that's really of interest.
And does anybody need a napkin like me?
Thank you.
I'm happy to
I'm
hand
not
out.
touching. I'm not touching.
I'm happy to hand out napkins so you have.
To remember that back to what we're studying are the copper plate engravings. Every line that you see here, every detail was done by hand with a little tool and a piece of metal. That is how all of this detail was created. So thank you for doing that. That's a good idea. So anyway, we talked about Ferrari, Blomart, we talked about Bessler, and now we're going to talk about Johann Christoph Volckmer. Volckmer came a little bit later, late 1600s, early 1700s, and his specialty was to do the lemons, to do the ribbon with the species description in the name, but he also did a geographical image. This one is Verona. This is Bergamoto, Misa da Verona, and he would do magnificent views of towns and locales all over Europe with the citrus fruit. And he admitted, I'm following Blomart and Ferrari with lemons and ribbons. So those are some of the people that are well known. Now, how do you avoid getting yourself in a jam? I've been on a Blomart Ferrari online, reputable place. They didn't say in the style of or anything else that lets you know it was a copy reproduction. We get it home, I open the frame, I'm like, oh, this is a piece of paper. This is a photographic reproduction. And I called them up and I said, this is a piece of paper. And they took it back. People usually are when they know that you know, they will take it back. But how can you avoid that? That's why we do it in person. That's a nice way to do it, when you can actually come and touch and feel and see. Although online, most people are very generous in acknowledging if they have misrepresented or they didn't know that something happened. I'll tell you a little story about the radio tape. So this radio tape came about is later than everybody in here. The Rate was in 1700s. And he was an interesting man. He was obviously one of the most popular and talented botanical artists in history. He had a little extra patronage. He did all three successive French empresses, Marie Antoinette, Josephine Bonaparte, and Marie Amélie. And they allowed him to create folios and volumes, and whatever he wanted to do, he could do. His work was exhibited at the Louvre in 1819, and he perfected the technique of watercolor. His work is also some of the most copied on porcelains, on pieces of decorative arts, on china. When you see a certain rose, that's a Rate rose. There's some Rate reproduction in the stairwell in the ladies' locker room, coming from the pool deck upstairs. And you'll look there again and back to value and cost, depending on subject. There's a garlic, there's a Rate garlic there. And that really wouldn't fetch a whole lot, or command a whole lot. It's attractive, it's a Rate, but it wouldn't command as much as one of the lilies or the roses. And he had, his two best books were Les Lilacies in 1802, and the roses. And I have to share a personal Rate story. Some good friends said, and when you're in this world, you kind of have radar for each other. You like this, you like that. People don't think you're eccentric. And a friend said, good friend said, well, come on over and see our Rate. And in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, they have a Rate. They have a pretty Rate. I'd like to see this Rate because I like Rate. We go into their house, we have drinks, we're chatting away. They said, okay, come on and see the Rate. We go into the library, and it wasn't a Rate, it was the book of Rate. It was in mint condition, it was in plastic, it had seldom been opened, and it was even embossed with the family name on it. And that was the fourth most exciting to me. Thank you for appreciated. To be that close to some of these pieces that are priceless and just hard to find. And then you say, well, how priceless and hard to find? So I got this at Doyle, and it's bad manners to talk about money, but this is collecting, so I guess it's okay. It was under $7,000. And Graham Rader, who is known to put higher prices on things, is selling it for $28,000. And Paul called me and said, goodbye, you had a good buy. I was a really good buy. And truthfully, there's no difference. Now, remember, this had a broken binding, 2 pages were out. This probably was intact. There probably were not 2 pages out. First editions, in good shape. I thought that was in great shape. So you have to be very careful. And you know, we were talking briefly about George Washington's. I have a few George Washington images that I've collected. Same exact image, same exact period, same exact paper. And people will charge 4 or 5 times as much. So it's sort of what the market will bear. Or if you're up in Vermont in an old little shack and you see one and you say, boy, that's got foxing, it's got discoloration, it's got a little bit of wormholes on it. But if I had that conservation work done, it'd be good as gold. And very expensive. So it's sort of a treasure hunt. It's a kind of fun thing. Now the club has a lot of botanicals throughout, if you've noticed as you walk around. I did a quick look. This is down the ladies' lounge. This is Swiss. There are 4 of these, and they were Swiss school prints. And they are prints. This is not out of the frame, but if you look closely, you can see it's a photographic image of this. It's not engraved into the paper. So they're lovely prints. I've also got here, again, you can touch these with or without jelly fingers. These are museum quality Bessler reproductions. Designers use them, people who don't care, bathrooms, houses, whatever. They're lovely, they're just reproductions, and how can you tell? If you run your hand over the surface, you'll see it's all one plane. You don't feel the indentations, you don't feel the, I can see from Revere, the I was gonna, Florence, I was gonna drink like those things. I really was. But it's just a fascinating thing. And people, you know, people enjoy them. People enjoy them. But if you're on the lookout, you can find the authentic period pieces. So if you wanted to collect, you said, I'm gonna start collecting botanical engravings. We've pretty much talked about, you want them in good condition, depending on the subject matter. Something that's a little blander, a little easier is gonna be less expensive. You want something with an artist that you know, you may want rich coloring, you may want black and white. I've now gone crazy for black and white because they're rarer, they're harder to find. The Radiotay Tiger Lily will command more than the garlic, as we mentioned. So there's a vast range of prices, vast range of condition. You can have things restored, conservators do magic, extremely expensive, it's extremely expensive. I use Clorox. They would die if well, they do know, and they go, you didn't really use Clorox. But these are some of the Curtis, who told me they collected Curtis. So here's, this is a Dr. Thornton, British mid-1800s. So this has foxing on it. You can tell this, and some people like to frame it like that. They say, I love the age. It gives it some credibility. You can also see the plate mark on this. And there's some information. I have taken some from this series and literally put them in a Clorox bath. A few drops of Clorox, block your nose. Few drops of water and deep cookie sheet, and I run it through the bath. And I pull it out, drip it, put it on paper towel, put a piece of glass or lucite over to smooth it, put it out in the sun, and they look fabulous. And then you have to rinse them again. You're supposed to use a buffer, you're supposed to use chemicals. The result, it works. Conservators have a heart attack. And you can experiment with some of the, you know, the lesser ones. You've all got something to take home, and that's a little explanation of some of the terms that you will come across in the printmaking and antique engraving world. What's an etching? What's a lithograph? What's aquatint? What's mezzotint? All the different gradations. What are the editions? You know, we talked about the first edition, which has the print coming through the verso, and then we have some of the deluxe editions, which they've kept clear. The lettering refers to the title, sometimes at the bottom. Different terms, watermark. A watermark is something that the paper maker will put on the paper, and you hold the paper up and you can say, oh, that's a certain brand that was in Italy in the 1800s, and that's another way of validating the time a piece came from. And then different condition reports, if you're buying something at auction or description, you would say there's foxing, there's, you know, mold damage, there's fungal, the different sizes, and the different kinds of paper that were made, either the paper, wove paper with pulp on a wire frame, or paper that was made on a machine that was much smoother. So I think one other thing, I brought this along because it's the sesquicentennial. This is another wonderful example of when I moved to Washington, I started collecting George Washington and Mount Vernon images, just I like them. This is a fabulous engraving. This is from the series Life of George Washington. And it's been colored. The version was black and white, would have been hand colored. The neat thing to remember, and you'll come up and look at this, the neat thing to remember is that every single line you see was done by hand. You know, some of these books took 6 years to do. So every little blade of grass, every little column of Mount Vernon, the pitchforks, the folds, the creases in the cravats, those were all done with a little tiny tool. I personally don't understand how they did it. And then you come on up and I think, come take a look. These are wonderful. These are Greek, and I really like these because you truly can feel the texture of the engraving.
Christina, I have a question.
Sure.
When you say these engravings are colored by hand, is it like watercolor?
Exactly.
Or ink or
It's what they take a little brush,
Yeah.
and you can see some are done, you know, more refined within the lines or lighter colors that are appropriate. There was a nice family, the Patinkins in Chicago, who found me online and asked me to deaccession their family's 3-generation collection of George Washington images. and some were beautiful, really unusual. One really, really important piece. And others were great black and white engravings, but somebody had, like a child had taken Crayola water and gone like that, and so it's, it's tricky.
Clorox won't do it.
Making your a mind reader, I was just gonna say, Clorox, I was afraid to try painting. Clorox I did, but not the paint. So, it's a neat thing. So come on up and take a look and touch and feel, and if you have any questions, I'm trying to keep things short and sweet. Anytime you want, come over to the house. We have, as my husband says, we have no more room on the wall.
Time for new house.
Yeah, but I enjoy sharing the collection, and it's been a lot of fun. It's taken us on some very interesting travels, and we've met some really, really neat people. And it's a lot of fun. And the nice thing about it is that your kids can, it's something that you can pass on, that George Washington, Eleanor knows, she came in, I tell a story, and there was a beautiful, was it Courier Knives? No, it wasn't Courier Knives, it was the newspaper. What is the weekly? The newspaper. Beautiful image of, thank you. Beautiful image of the Capitol. It was gorgeous, the detail was incredible. And somebody said, my relative, my grandfather, gotta have that, okay, have that. But that's something that the kids can enjoy too. And the rate-a-tay is not Catherine's. Mama, can I please have the rate-a-tay? Can I please have the rate-a-tay? So that's Catherine's. So it's really something fun to pass on. And they hold their value, they stay in great shape. That to me, again, is the thing that's so interesting. These are from the 1700s. So, questions?
I liked when you passed around that 3 pages that showed the Hortus Medicus with the long alley. And Bunny Mellon has a very similar, I guess you call it an alley, or what do you call it, a pergola? And then she has like a 3-week, the Oak Springs Garden Foundation has that 3-week intensive in botanical illustration. And when we did a tour there, all these young people were coming through and they were doing botanical illustration at Oak Springs.
That's great.
At the Garden Foundation.
And that's, thank you for bringing that up, because what's happening now, and there's some terrific, if you go to the website, get a card, Taylor Carlisle Galleries. If you go to the website, there are a couple of articles, and one of them is the enduring appeal of botanicals. It's very cyclic. And botanicals are hot right now among 30, 40-year-old designers. They are big. And it's very, very cyclic. 30 years ago, they were big, dead. Nobody wants to do. I got some ferns in England, and the lady at the Soul shop said, you must take these. All the British designers are doing them. And it turns out they were worth what? Lots. They were worth lots. I was giving them away like buy one, take one. And they were very special. They were very rare, and they're very in again. They're hot. Architectural Digest did an article. If you just type in botanical engravings, Wayfair, everybody has the reproduction, ferns, botanicals, whatever. And then you say, oh, well, Chris, that's $3,000. Well, they have it at Etsy for $12, and they just take pictures and sell them, and people buy them, and that's fine. But it's a different way of doing it. But it's a fun hunt. And back to this again. This was the orangeries in this Hespery's volume. What they were doing was discussing the different ways to preserve and protect. There are other pages with garden tools, absolutely exquisite garden tools. But this would have been one of the ways of protecting some of the citrus fruit. So come on up and take a look and touch.
Thank you, Chris.
Come up close.